Well, hello, everybody. How's it going? Rob is dancing.
Going good.
Going good. Oh, that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear it.
Orpheus, I don't know if you heard me earlier, but Mitch and I will be in and out because we've got a doctor's appointment for his hand.
We read the book.
But you want me to? I appreciate that you read the book. Yeah, no, totally understand. Yeah, no, by all means. And Mitch, I hope that your hand is doing better.
Yeah, so we'll be in and out, but we'll do our best.
Yeah, of course. No worries at all. No worries at all. Now you're in both places. Nice.
So,
all right.
I don't know.
It's all good. So, so welcome, guys. It's good to have everybody here. On our first kind of live streamed develop call. We've done this for quite a while in the Discord, but decided to bring it to the live stream. For one thing, it's easier to record that way, but for another, it's this way, if there are other people out there who would like to join in and who would like to participate, they definitely are able to do so. If there's anybody who's out there who is new to the weekly development calls, first of all, welcome. My name is Orpheus, and we do this once a week. It started out as a way for us to kind of just, as streamers or people who are streaming adjacent or content creation adjacent, it started out as a way for us to get together on a weekly basis and to talk about how to do the things that we do even better. And from there, it's transformed in a couple of different ways, but it's definitely becoming something where on a weekly basis we are getting together and really focusing on not just how we can be better streamers, but how we can be better at all of the things that we do across our lives. And so that's what this is. Right now, we are focusing on this book right here. This book is called Mind Shift. It's by Erwin Raphael McManus. It doesn't take a genius to think like one. It's a great little book. It's very short. It's 13 chapters long, but they're really, really short chapters, like 10 pages each. It's like 130 pages total. And so that's what we're going to be talking about for the next 13 weeks. We'll take it one chapter at a time. The idea is that we'll just read one chapter every week, and then we'll discuss some of the observations that we had from the book and some of the things that we learned from the book. So that right there is where we're at. So welcome to my friends in Discord. I already said hi to most of you, but it's good to see you out there. So let's dive right into it. Chapter or mind shift number 0. So each of these chapters are referred to as mind shifts, and mind shift number 0 here is change your mind. Change your mind. There it is. Okay, no, that's one. Change your mind. So let me ask you guys as people, and again, so various different ways to respond, right? You guys can feel free to respond. You're here to learn things. Thank you, Guitar. I just pulled up the Discord chat. So you can feel free to respond, obviously coming off mic and responding in the Discord. Feel free to respond in the Twitch chat, which I have up in front of me. Feel free to respond in the Discord chat, just whatever makes you comfortable. That's the way that you should jump into the conversation. But I want to start with the question. As you read this first chapter, or this 0 chapter, really, of the book that we're in, what were some things that stood out to you? What were some things that grabbed you, that you thought were really interesting, that you thought would be like meaningful to talk about? What were the things? What were the high points where you said, "Hey, this was something I took away from Mindshift 0"?
Really, honestly, for me, I mean, it was as simple as just instantly the dude's like, you just need to make a change, and that instantly hit. And the Buster Douglas, which Head of Steel said, that really that hit me real good. A lot of the stories really put into perspective, I guess, already in a sense, some stuff, but at the same time it also made me think, okay, well, I'll go down this road and try to be open-minded to it, and try to more so listen, because I listened to it. I didn't read it, and in all reality, I probably could have read it faster than the guy reads it. But I get how he's trying to put it out there. But yeah, I mean, it made me feel more like, okay, this will be a way for me to kind of follow a change path.
Definitely back on headphones. Awesome. Didn't expect a Buster Douglas reference. Head of Steel, me either, but that was an interesting talking about, you know, the difference between kind of being at the top and then falling all the way to the bottom, right? Really interesting. The way that we look at that. I think what was the sportscaster said, what was it? Was he was wired for failure, or what was the phrase that he uses? He uses it right away.
He is a person who is destined for failure.
Some people are simply structured for failure. Yeah, exactly. And so that was the part that I thought was really interesting. Where are we structured for failure? Like, how do we set ourselves up for our own failure? And how many times, you know, do we do that in our lives at various different things, and at the intersection of across the different activities that we have in our lives? One of the things, it's funny. So real quick, for those of you who are listening to the audiobook, because the audiobook is out there, as someone who narrates audiobooks, the one thing I will tell you is, when you go into a studio to record, they usually make you record the book way slower than you normally would. And the reason for that is because a lot of people listen to audiobooks on like double speed. And so they force you in the studio to record it super slow. So I'm the same way. Like when I listen to an audiobook, I'm like, dude, why is this guy reading so slow? Just from an insider's perspective, it's because they make you do it. It drives me crazy, but that's the job. Let me ask you this. So before I move into that, anything else that popped out at you out of the first chapter? I know a lot of you are on headphones or on in the car and things like that, but was there anything else that popped out at anybody and you said, well, this is an insight. This is something that I really need to incorporate into my own thinking? I get nothing, so we're going to say no. So I'm gonna move to a question, right? That's connected to actually that point that Rob just made, and that's this. What do you think are some examples of mental frameworks that might destine us to fail, right? Because that's the question that Erwin asks. Is he asks himself in that moment? He says, "Have I embraced mental frameworks that destine me to fail?" Right. So what are some examples of mental frameworks that might destine us to fail? What do you think some of those might be? Because I have ideas.
Maybe like I don't know another word for it. A pessimistic outlook, I guess, is a really good one in my opinion. When I think of that, I think of just like people who always think of the down, not the up. People who seem to thrive in bad situations, stuff like that.
Yeah, I definitely think that's it, right? Just an outlook that always causes us to say, oh, what bad things are gonna happen, or what are the points at which I could fail, right? I think that's a huge one. If anybody else has anything else, of course, feel free as always to chime in. For me, sorry, go ahead. I jumped on you. Nope. Did we lose you there? We're just getting bits and pieces, I think, right now. You might be going through a tunnel. She's typing. Self-doubt. Yeah, I think self-doubt's huge, right? Like how often do we stop ourselves from getting to where we want to be because we never start? Right? That's one of my biggest things is how many times in the past have I never gotten to the point that I could have gotten to because I just didn't start. Because I doubted myself. I doubted my own ability to do it. Or maybe like Rob was saying, like maybe I thought of all of the bad things that could happen. And I said, I don't want to put myself in a situation where I could fail in that way. And those of you who have been on the calls, that I always believe that there are three major reasons, and there's probably more, but there are three major reasons that I always look at people and say, they're not stepping into their moment of greatness. They're not becoming the best thing that they could become. And one of those three is that a lot of people are afraid of failure because they think of failure as the end. They think when I try something, when I start something, if I come to a place where I fail at that thing, then that's it. I've failed. It's done. It's over. And not only that, but they then incorporate that failure into their personality. They don't say, I failed, I messed up. It's, I am a failure at this, right? I become a failure at this. And I think that's a major mental framework that destines us for failure. Seeing any individual failure as the end of the road is 100% destining ourselves for failure. Have you ever embraced a framework like that? That really has pointed you in the direction of failure? Have you ever incorporated into your mentality something that has kept you from being the success that you could be? Because I'll tell you, I definitely have. Right? There have been a lot of... You have? Okay, good. I'm glad I'm not alone. Go ahead.
I don't know how to explain it. You know what I mean? But I know I have like put myself in a mindset where I just feel like it's failing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really know how to explain it too well.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think of times where in my career when I've gone out and, I've gone to a place where maybe, things were hard, right? Like it became hard to, I think of when I worked in the bank or when I worked in sales or those things. And I would go to a new store or a new branch that was known for having a hard time. And I would go in and know that the deck was stacked against me. And there were times when I let that get to me and I said, the deck's stacked against me. The best I'm going to be able to do is bring this up to kind of zero, right? Bring it from -10 to 0. And then I'm just going to try to do that. But what I noticed is every time in my life when I've tried to do that, when I've tried to bring something from negative up to a 0, those have always been the moments where I failed. Right? Because I think that the mental model, the mental framework of saying, I'm just going to get something up to acceptable, from unacceptable to acceptable, I think that's a structure for failure. I think that it's not until we push ourselves to say, I can make this something great, that we will actually begin to achieve great things. So, I'm definitely guilty. I guess not guilty. Like it's not like a crime to do this, right? It's very, very human. But the question that we're here to answer is not like, how do we, just be okay? It's how do we be great, right? That's what we come here for, is to figure out how to become great, not how to become fine. So, another one of the things that Erwin says, he says this on, let's see, on page 5, he talks about a couple of things, but he says the level of physical pain you can endure is mostly in your head. And he's talking about how, like, all of these things, a lot of this is going, book, yes. Oh, gosh, is that not working? Sorry, Kiwi. What is this? Kiwi, welcome in, first of all. So this is our weekly development call. What we do is we meet together once a week. We're just live streaming today for the first time. I don't know why that command's not working, because I just set it up in Nightbot, but I will look into that. But so we get together once a week and we talk about ways to make ourselves better. Right, to improve the quality of our lives, to improve the quality of our streaming or our job or our family life or whatever it is that we do. We're always seeking ways to become better at what we do. And so right now we are looking at this book right here. It's called Mind Shift. It's by Erwin Raphael McManus. Whoa, this camera's having a real hard time with that. Mind Shift, it doesn't take a genius to think like one. And it's 12 different mind shifts. Really 13, because we're in 0 right now. We're trying to be here. Discord was not. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. You're totally fine. Yeah, so we're looking at that. And right now we're talking about mind shift number 0, which is change your mind. And the concept behind change your mind is any change that we want to make in our lives, whether it's a change of our behaviors, our habits, whether it's a change in our performance. I see help goes well. Thank you. I appreciate it. And you're always welcome to join in. You don't have to read the book. Like, it's just an open discussion. But everything starts with a change of mind. And this goes back to what I was talking about, where he says, it's not you, it's the cell phone service. Oh, I'm sorry, Whit. That's the worst. Cell phone service is a crime. But he talks about the amount of pain that you experience is largely in your head. And the fact of the matter is, I'm reading another book by a neuroscientist, and that is actually true, right? She talks about how we construct pain in our brains, much as we construct emotions in our minds, right? We a lot of times we think of emotions as things that happen to us or things that are triggered, but that's not in fact how the brain works. The brain doesn't get triggered. What the brain does, what your brain is doing, is it's constantly making predictions about what's going on around you, and then it's using the input from your senses to confirm or deny those predictions. And what emotions are, according to her, and now we're going off track a little bit, but I'm going to bring it back around. What emotions are, as she's saying, in the constructed model of emotions, emotions are the way that you have learned to interpret the confirmation or the non-confirmation of the predictions that your brain is making. Right. And so your brain is constantly making predictions. It's constantly confirming those, or constantly saying there's prediction error that's going on here. And based on that, that's how you construct emotions. And by changing your circumstances, or by changing the way that you categorize things, you can actually affect your overall emotional state. This is why you always got to be positive, so positive things can happen. That's exactly where I was going with this. Thank you so much. That's exactly it, right? Because here's the thing. If our brain is constantly predicting the worst, how can you expect to not experience the worst? The answer is you cannot. Neurologically, you cannot. Neurologically, scientifically, if you predict the worst on a consistent basis, you will achieve the worst. You will become the worst. You will experience the worst. And so the question is, how do we create frameworks for ourselves where we say, some stuff's going to happen, right? But at the end of the day, we believe that we can achieve the best. And one of the ways I do this, one of the things that I'm creating some things right now. I'm creating some different ideas around this. All of this is kind of spinning around in my head. And one of my big sayings right now is, and I'm telling this to my kids, to my wife, to myself, to everybody. One of the things is, it's not a snake. And you say, Orpheus, what does that mean? It's not a snake. Well, here's what it is, right? Because we lack sometimes I'm gonna use the term granularity. And when I mean granularity, when I say granularity, what I mean is, I was in another coaching group about a week ago, and the person who was leading that group, this is a group where I'm actually receiving a lot of coaching. The person who was leading that group said, what do you think of happiness? Like, what do you think of happiness? And my response after looking at the stuff that I'm reading is, happiness is not great, right? Because we have a tendency to say one of two things, right? We either feel good about things or we feel bad about things. We either feel happy about things or we feel sad or maybe even angry or those things. But there are so many shades and so much differentiation, so many gradations to all of those things, that it's only when we start to recognize that, hey, what I'm feeling is not the same kind of fear or anxiety that I would be experiencing if I were in actual danger. But because I haven't created the framework to differentiate between those things, my body and my brain are responding as if I were in danger. Which says, I know one of my biggest problems is I predict the worst, but hope for the best. Well, but at least you hope for the best, right? And the more that you say to yourself, I am capable of the best is coming, the more you say that to yourself, the more your brain will start to change those predictions, right? And I think a part of it is this granularity that I'm talking about, where it's like, okay, listen, I'm going to take an example from my own life, right? I actually just finished narrating an audiobook for an author that I've worked with a number of times. And this guy's very particular about the way he wants things done, as well he should be, right? This is his book. And so I recorded the book and I sent it off to him. And he came back to me with some feedback that said, hey, here are some things that I don't like, right, about what you've done with the book. And now I know very well from my past experience with this guy, he's not getting down on me. He's not going to say, oh, you know what, you're fired, whatever else, right? None of that is the case. And in fact, I'm kind of looking to get out of that line of work because it's not really super aligned with the mission of where I'm going anyway. So the stakes for me are actually very low. But when I have received those kinds of feedback in the past, it's caused a lot of anxiety in me. It's caused a lot of anxious behaviors because it's like, oh no, someone is saying something negative about something that I've done. And what I did this last time is I said, you know what? Here's the thing. I've been through this before, this same situation. It ended up fine. I came out of it totally fine. He obviously came to me with another book. I don't even really want to be doing this work right now at this moment anyway, but I'm just doing it. I'm going to obviously do the best that I can. But whatever he comes back with, the worst thing that can happen is I have to read this book again, and that's not the friggin' end of the world, right? It's not like it's a long book. So what I had to say to myself in that moment was, this is not a snake. It's not the same as if I'm walking through the forest and a giant snake drops out of the tree and I have to have this anxious fight or flight response. I don't have to do that because I can recognize in my brain from my past experience that this is not a snake. Hey, War, what's up? Welcome in, dude. Welcome in. So I think that's one of the ways that we can start to change our frameworks and lead them towards the positive, is that we have to recognize that sometimes when we feel reactions in our body that seem like they're fear or depression or anxiety, sometimes it's just because we're not naming those things for what they are. We're not recognizing that, oh, this is, I mean, you can even make up your own word for it, right? This is like post-reading book feedback that I'm feeling, right? But it's not fear. It's not anxiety. It's not those things, right? It feels like those things, but I don't have to let it be an instance of those things. So that's one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting, the way a couple of my readings have dovetailed in. On page 8, Erwin says, we are blind to the patterns of thought and behavior that create the same problem over and over again. We're blind to the patterns of thought and behavior that create the same problem over and over again. Have you ever experienced anything like that? Where you keep running into the same wall over and over and over again, and no matter what you do, you cannot figure out why that is?
Yes. All the time.
And what do you do? So what's your process when you get into that space? What do you do?
I don't know.
You don't know?
That's the thing. I don't really have an answer for that, unfortunately.
Well, that's okay.
I just kind of go with the flow. I don't really think about it. That's why
Gotcha.
why I wanted to do this stuff, because it's like, oh, maybe this will help me figure out a process.
Totally. Hey, War Skull, what's up? How's it going, man? It's good to see you. Yeah, I think about this a lot, right? Because one of the reasons that I have always had a tendency to work in teams of people, or to bring teams of people alongside me, or to go to people, is because I'm keenly aware of my own blindness to things. And so I'm often seeking out insight or advice or feedback or things like that from other people, because I know that the things that are causing me obstacles, or the obstacles that I'm running into, very frequently are not things, they're being caused by things I'm doing, but I'm not seeing them, which says I have it so frustrating. I have to walk away and work on something else, or do something else to clear my head before trying to deal again. That's good, right? Like a break in activity sometimes is exactly what you need. I agree with that 100%. Sometimes it's best just to change the switches in the brain, to say, you know what, I am not making headway with this. I'm going to move towards this. Helps give me clear perspective. That's really good. Also, just staying in constant conversation with people. One of the things, my wife Patch and I, we're always talking about stuff, nonstop. This morning we were talking about what I was reading in the neurology book, and it was talking about I was talking about a lot of things. We were talking about the way that our legal system is kind of tilted in favor of saying that, well, we're going to judge people based on whether or not they feel remorse. But in fact, you can't really, there's no real way to tell if a person is feeling remorse or not, because every instance of remorse looks different from every other instance of remorse, even within an individual person, right? And so one of the ways that I gain perspective on the things that are going on in my life is I'm constantly in conversation about those things. I never want my voice to be the only one that's kind of echoing around in my head, because I think that self-echo chamber is some of what creates that loop of constantly running up against the same things and not being able to get through them. Just trying to figure them out on my own sets me up for failure pretty much every time. I don't know if you're the same, but that's me. As we know, I'm not a smart man, so. This one was really good too, man. This one killed me. on page 9, he says, we all long to maximize the one life we have. And most of us don't feel confident that we know how to do that. So the question that I came up with there, right, and I asked myself the same question, but is, how confident do you feel about knowing how to maximize the one life you have? And this has been a big thing for me lately, because again, I'm getting on the older side of things now, right? I'm easily on the second half of my life. And as I think about it, I think, how many years of potential impact do I have left? And what do I want to do with those years of potential impact? Do I just want to live a good life and be happy in those things? Or do I want to maximize my impact? Do I want to maximize things and do the best thing? Do I want to change the world? Right? And I mean, for me, the answer is yes. But the question is, do I feel like do I feel confident that I know how to? I'm starting to have some ideas, right?
I know that I want to try to live my life the way that I want to and to the fullest. But at the same time, I always feel like I get held back by something, and there's no real way for me to fix that. And no matter how much I try to fix that issue, I feel like I just stagnate, essentially.
I gotcha. Oh, camera wants to focus on the skeleton. Guitar, you're with Wit. Yep. I think we're all kind of on board with that same thing. What are some of the obstacles you come up against where you feel like they're out of your control?
I don't think I'm financially stable enough, or I also I'm not the best with financial decisions in general.
So how much of that is out of your control?
Well, none. I mean, I could 100% control that.
So the question becomes, right? The question becomes not, it sounds to me, right? Like, and I'm not calling you out, because I'm speaking to myself here in this moment too, right? In those moments, I have to say to myself, why are you allowing this to be an obstacle, right? If I know what I want, if I know that I am capable of, or that, that I want to, or that I can live a better life than I'm living, then why do I allow myself those moments? Why do I allow myself those habits? Why do I allow myself those self-doubts? Why do I allow those obstacles to be obstacles for myself? And I'm not asking you to answer that question, but I'm just saying, like, that's the thought process that I'm coming into. Mitch says, based on modern life expectancy, middle age isn't 50, it's closer to 35, but that is good. It's never too late to. Thanks, Mitch. I appreciate that. Always looking out for my expiration date. There are a lot of things out of my control that I stress over, and I've started trying really hard not to stress over those things because they aren't helping me. They're giving me anxiety. And I think that's a good point too, right, Whit? Because we talk about this, and one of the things that we try to do in our lives is we try so desperately to control the things that are out of our control. And we get so frustrated by trying to control the things that are out of our control that we don't have any energy left to control the things that are in our control. At least, again, this is with me. Your mileage may vary, but I think that's a big problem. If the worst habits that I have in my life, the moments where I fall shortest of where I want to be or where I need to be, are the moments when I'm so tired of trying to control everything in the world that I just let go of the control I have over myself. Sorry, my hubs is a He's not a jerk. He's just looking out for my expiration date, Whit. I appreciate it. It's totally fine. I see typing. I'm gonna give a moment for that. But I do think that's an important point, right? I think that if we're gonna live our best lives, if we're gonna be our best selves, we gotta determine. We gotta be intentional, guys. Intentional is my word for the year. We gotta be intentional about figuring out what's controllable and what's not, and put all of our focus on what's controllable. Right. I heard a speaker this last week talk about, and I'll get to the chat in just a second, but I heard a speaker talk about the way people use language to to try and manipulate people, which is, that's language is a huge tool for manipulation. But he talked about the language of there's always a victim and a victimizer, right? Always a victim and a victimizer. And if you're using that language, you're very specifically trying to draw people to one pole or the other. But it's only really when you start to get in and define, right, who's responsible for what. If we accept the role of the victim all the time, I'm not saying people aren't victimized. Of course, there are things that are happening that are completely out of control that are just other people's fault, right? But if we accept that there's always a victim and always a victimizer in every scenario, then we start to put the ideal into our head that the things that happen to us are bad, are out of our control. And sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't. And what I'm saying is we need to make a keen determination between when they are and when they aren't, because until we do that, we will just try to control them all. And that'll kill us. Okay, so I'm reading, Tal says, I haven't rode horses consistently for so long that I have a fear that had developed that if I mount up, I'm going to get bucked off and get injured and no one will be there to call for help. That's exactly it, Tal, right? I think you're talking about exactly it. It's because you haven't had that consistency, because you haven't built that practice, because you haven't been able to be in that situation enough to feel in control of it. Your fear of being out of control is what causes you to stumble, or causes you not to do the thing that you want to do, or not to be the best that you can be 100%. And when that happens, what do? Well, one of the things that I do is I look back on my past successes, right? I've always told you, another reason people don't step into their moment of greatness is because they don't believe that they created their past successes. They believe that successes happen by accident, but that's not true. There may be accident involved, there may be luck involved, or divine intervention, or whatever you want to call it, fate. I don't believe in that, but if you believe in that, we can throw that in there. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, right? If you think about all of the good things that have happened in your life, you played a part in all of those. If it was a success, if it was a victory, you played a part. You played a role, no matter how small. You played a role, and without that role, that success never happens, right? But we get out of the habit of doing things, and then those old fears creep back. Mitch says, I've been told many times I let life just happen to me. I don't try to control anything. I'm on a river without a paddle. This is also Erwin, right? Page 9 of the book. He says, most of us not only avoid near-death experiences, we avoid near-life experiences as well. That was like, of all of the things in this chapter that probably rolled over me the most, that was probably the number one that just blew me up. Rob, did you have something to say about that?
That one hit me like a rock.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that too. I feel like there's so many things I want to do, and I go to do them, and then I feel like I just quit right at the finish line, and that really bothers me. And that one, that hit me like a freight train. As soon as he said it, I was like, oh, good Lord, he's talking to me.
Right? Exactly. Let's see. Okay, I'm just gonna read a little bit of that passage for those who maybe had, because I know a couple of people haven't gotten the book yet, and I apologize for that, by the way. Amazon, blame Amazon. But on page 9, it says, growing older by itself is no great accomplishment. Mostly, it means I've avoided death so far. That, by the way, has been no small feat. I've been close to death many times, facing down both gunmen ready to shoot and stage 4 cancer that has already metastasized. But that's not the point of this book. However, I've learned that, unfortunately, most of us not only avoid near-death experiences, we avoid near-life experiences as well. We almost risk for love. We almost pursue our dreams. We almost overcome our fears. We almost live the life we long for. We almost make the decision that would have changed everything. And then we get to the end of our lives and realize that we were so close. We were always just one choice away. And that That was the part where I'm like, oh my gosh, we're stuck on the spinning wheel of death. Sorry. That's cool. We'll get the VOD. So yeah, I mean, that was the thing. Like, I don't know about you guys. I am done living a life of almost. I'm done living a life of safe, of comfortable, of happy. Like, you know, all of those things are fine if you don't want to live your best life, right? All of those things are fine if you don't want to live your best life. But if you want to live your best life, you cannot live a life of almost. Yeah, that was a crazy one to me too. Oh, and this kind of dovetails into where Mitch, and I know Mitch is there on the road right now, but he says on page 9 also, if your life is happening by accident, you are only existing. And he draws the distinction between the difference between living, right, which is fully living in our purpose and, you know, in our mission and on a trajectory that's leading us to a place where we want to be. The difference between that and and existing, which is just, you know, living that life without a paddle. And I think that what this chapter is telling us is that if we want to take up a paddle, if we want to pick up a paddle, and if we want to go someplace in our life, wherever that place is, then we have to start with a mind shift, right? Every major change starts with a mind shift. And that makes me ask this other question, right? Because he talks about the real battle being between the easy good and the hard best. So my question is, why are we so prone to choosing the easy good over the hard best? Why is the easy good? Why is it so enticing to us? Why do we do that time after time? Choose the easy good instead of the hard best. Again, I have ideas for myself, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Probably just because it's easier, I guess.
It's in the definition. It's definitely easier, right?
Maybe you find comfort in the ease of it, maybe. Not sure. I don't have a good answer for that, actually.
Well, I've got a little bit of input.
Mhm.
Just sometimes the easy good is it's good enough for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But we know we can do better. But why put forth the extra effort when nobody's going to appreciate it?
Yeah. I think that's good, right? And I think that right there plays into the question of how much do you think you're worth? Right? How much do you think that you are worth as an individual? How much of an impact do you think that you could have? Because I think when we don't see ourselves as worthy, impactful, strong, you know, people with strong potential to change the world around us, we start to look at other people's expectations of us instead. And very frequently, other people's expectations of us are not designed to take us to our highest place. They're designed to keep us in a place. Let that sink in for a second. Other people's expectations of you, and if you don't have expectations of yourself, your life will be defined by other people's expectations for you or of you. But other people's expectations usually are not designed to take us to a higher place. They're designed to keep us in a place. Because it's so much easier to deal with the world when it's all in your control. And if I can define you, then I can control you. Right? And it sounds very sinister, and it really isn't. That's just natural. This goes all back to the conversation that we've been having, which is, at the end of the day, we have this inherent need to be in control of things. We want so badly to be in control of things. There's the fear of flying, right? The fear of flying is not a fear of travel. It's not even a fear of flying, quite frankly. We know statistically that if you get into a car and you drive down the road, you're far more likely to die than if you get into a plane. Far, far more likely. But we don't fear getting in the car. At least most of us don't, right? Statistically, people don't fear getting in the car. They fear getting in the plane. Why? What's the difference? When I'm driving in the car, I have control, right? I have a steering wheel. I have a brake pedal. I have a gas pedal. I have control. When I get in the plane, for as long as I'm in the cabin of that plane, I'm at the mercy of whoever is at the controls, right? Let's see. Oh, and we have an ad break in progress. Sometimes the easy fast is viewed as the most efficient of options. I would agree with that. Guitar says, I'm super afraid of flying and always think that makes me a narcissist because somehow if I'm in the plane, it will crash. That is a mental prediction. Guitar, I don't think it makes you a narcissist. I think it speaks right to exactly what we're talking about, which is you have, just like I have, just like everybody has, you have a fear of being out of control of things. And when you start to name that fear, when you start to realize, I'm not afraid of flying, I'm afraid of not driving. Sometimes that makes a change. Now, not always. I'm not saying there's any magic bullet for curing a fear of flying or a fear of heights or any of those things. I'm not claiming any of that. I'm just bringing it back to our life, right? Where if we treat everything like it's a fear of flying and we never get in the plane, we never get to the destination. And that's my fear, is that if we don't step into places where we don't have total control, we never get to the destinations that are waiting for us. So here's what I think. When I ask this question, confidence in the pilot goes a long way getting into a car. That's true. That's deal. The reason I think we choose the easy good over the hard best sometimes is because the hard best exists in the domain of the unknown. And that's the same thing with getting into the plane. I don't know who the pilot is. I don't know what his qualifications are. I don't know how much sleep he had last night, how much coffee he had today. I don't know what his mental health is like. I don't know. I am stepping into the unknown. And it's the same thing when we reach for things, when we stretch for things in our life. We have to step into a place where things are unknown, where things become ambiguous for a time. And that's what makes us sometimes stay tethered to the good, to the easy good, because we're afraid. We have a fear. And fears are okay. But courage, right? People say it all the time. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's acting in despite of the fear. So that's a mind shift that I think we have to make as well. I see Taz typing. Let's see. What time do we have here? We got 15 minutes left. We had a field trip where I had to get my dad to sign for it because it was a plane flight. My mom was afraid it would crash. And I went, exactly. Well, and that's the other thing, right? This goes back to emotions and how emotions are made, right? Because again, if we accept that there's no fingerprint for an emotion. If you do an MRI scan on somebody who's angry, and then you do another scan on them when they're angry again, it looks different in the brain. There is the idea that there's a center of emotion in the brain is not a scientific concept. Any neuroscientist will tell you that is an outdated concept. There is no emotional center of the brain. Instead, there's this concept of what's called degeneracy, which isn't as bad as it sounds. But degeneracy says that all of these processes take place across multiple parts of the brain at the same time. And in fact, sometimes when a part of the brain that we expect to house a certain function is damaged, that function can be carried out by other parts of the brain as well. But emotions in specific do not live in your amygdala or your prefrontal cortex or wherever somebody wants to tell you. The limbic system, which is a myth and doesn't actually exist. Your emotions don't live there. They live all throughout your brain. So you can't say there's a fingerprint. what there are shared cultural concepts of what an emotion looks like in expression. So if I, scowl and, squint my eyes, then you might see me as angry. But somebody from a different culture might see me as something completely different. There are cultures out there that have emotional concepts that don't even exist in our language, right? So this is proof that there is no essential body of emotions. Emotions are constructed partially through the process of our prediction and response, or prediction and the confirmation of the prediction, but also partially by the social group that we're in. So why am I bringing this back to brain science? Because when your mom is afraid of you crashing, when she's afraid of you flying, that begins to build a category for you. And maybe at some point you choose to accept or deny that, but we affect each other. We create each other's existence, right? And so one of the things that is very important for us is to be in the presence of people who will help us create an existence where we succeed, not where we fail. What was the of the book and the brain again? It's called it's by Lisa Feldman Barrett. Barrett, I think. And it's called How Emotions Are Made. I don't remember the subtitle. Really, really good book. Took me a while to get into it because it's a lot of science. But the last few chapters especially are really, really good because they talk about, how emotions work, how emotions work and all of these concepts like, hey, you create your emotions, but guess what? You also are creating other people's emotions at the same time. And it's the same way with thought, right? Thought and emotion are not separate things. There's no rational brain and no emotional brain. It's all the same brain. All of those systems are interconnected. And so what you create in here is what will happen in your life. Alexa, stop. Sorry. Yeah. So I think the key point there is be careful of what you put out into the world because it creates other people's realities. And be careful of what you allow to go into your system because what you allow to go into your system will create your reality as well. And the whole concept of mind. Hey, welcome back. How are you guys? It's good to see you. Welcome in. Welcome in. It's been so long. I hope TwitchCon was good. We're getting pretty close to wrapping up here, but I do want to catch up with you guys. But thank you again for the resub. Happy 9 months goes to Jack John. I appreciate it. We're sad. You're sad? I'm sorry that you're sad. You're sad because you're home. Amazing. Just back from Vegas. Nice. Good. Well, listen, I want to wrap up, guys, with one concept here. One more concept. And that's this. I talked about this very polar. No, you're totally fine. You're not interrupting at all. Not interrupting in the slightest. I love you guys. I'm so glad to see you here. Sorry, we're on a train and we're like 9 minutes from the end. So I just want to make sure I got this last piece out, and it's this, right? We talked about how language is polarizing, and if you think about it, like you think about politics or anything that like are hot button topics, so often you have people on both ends of the spectrum, right? People that are far left or far right, or you have people that are, that identify themselves as conservative or liberal or whatever else, right? Whatever the labels are that we want to use for ourselves. But so often, there are people that love Brussels sprouts and hate Brussels sprouts, whatever stupid thing it is. We have a tendency to gravitate towards the poles. But I want to suggest to you that this idea of the easy good and the hard best, that what's really at play there is the fact that it's not that there are poles, right? Because I think there's a pole that's beyond the hard best, right? The pole that's beyond the hard best is the impossible perfectionist, right? So the easy good, that's fine. And then way on the other end, there's like, oh, perfection. That's absolutely 100% perfection. But I think that in the middle of those, right, is the hard best, right? The place where you can come to the hard best. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is we always live in tension between two great poles. If people are far left or far right, love or hate, whatever it is. And so often the truth in where the growth comes is not at one of those poles, but in between, in the tension between. Because we live in a world that's not black and white, as much as we want it to be black and white. And why do we want it to be black and white? This is going back to the same thing. We want the world to be black and white because we're afraid of what we can't control. And if we can't conceptualize it in terms of good or evil, right or wrong, left or right, if we can't conceptualize it in those ways, it falls into the realm of the unknown, that tension between things. But I'm suggesting to you that Mind Shift Zero, Change Your Mind, is calling you into that tension. It's calling you away from the safe things that you know and that you're comfortable with, and for the categories that make sense and that you've grown up knowing, all of those things. And it's calling you into a moment where you don't know what's going to happen next. And that moment right there, I think, is where we stop existing and start living. Right? And the difference, what we're going to find is the difference between people who are just wandering and the people who are heading somewhere to make an impact on the world. Those people are going to make the mind shifts that we're going to see in the chapters that are to come. So there's 12 more chapters to come. So they're going to make these upcoming mind shifts. I'm going to leave you with a question. And the question is this. You know, I am not expecting an answer here, but I want you to think about this this week, and maybe we'll chat about it a little bit at the top of next week. But the question that I want to leave you with is, what mental models or frameworks might you be resistant to give up, and why? Right? Because one of the things about making a mind shift, about changing from one mental framework to another one, is that some of those old frameworks have to die. We have to give them up. And I think that sometimes we are resistant to give up some of those old mental models and those old frameworks. And I want you to think this week about what you're afraid to give up. What about your mental system, your belief system, your belief system in yourself, your habits and disciplines or lack thereof? What are you afraid to give up, and why are you afraid to give it up? And then we'll come back and discuss that a bit next week. We got about 4 minutes. Does anybody have any parting shots, any closing shots, any observations that I've missed, any good stuff? I mean, there's a ton of good stuff. We could do 4 hours on just this chapter alone, but we don't have that much time. So anybody got any parting shots here?
I think you've covered it very well. I think the question you've posed is hurting my head already, so I gotta think about that. But yeah, I mean, it's a good start. I think where this is gonna be a good journey, and I'll be happy to be a part of it. And you're bald. I don't know. Just
So
felt
bold,
like breaking
so
the
very bold,
thing.
incredibly bold. You took a lot from today. Awesome guitar. I'm glad, man. I'm very happy about that. And again, guys, listen. Here's the thing, right? When you come on a weekly basis, just understand, I'm not coming. I know I talk a lot during these, but part of that's because I'm uncomfortable with silence, and so I just have a tendency to fill it. I'm always that guy where if the teacher asks the question and nobody answers it for like 7 seconds, then I'll throw an answer out, even though it's probably wrong, just because I feel so bad for the teacher that he has to sit in silence. I know there are some people who are not crazy about that, like I am, but that's me. So like, I'm gonna fill the space with a lot. If you guys don't bring stuff, and so I don't want to say that to like prod you and say, hey, listen, you have to answer every question out loud or in chat or anything like that. But I do want to let you know that I want to invite you into this space because I'm not claiming to be an expert. I'm just claiming to be a person who's on the same journey with you guys. And if I can help us ask some of the right questions that will help us move to some of the right places, then I've fulfilled a part of my mission in life, right? That's my part of my goal is to introduce people to the best version of themselves. That's my stated goal in life. And I can't take you to the best version of yourself. That's work that you've got to do. But if I can at least introduce you, if I can get you to shake hands with somebody who's a step better than you are now, that's closer to where you want to be, closer to the person you want to be, then I've done my job. And I'm happy with that. So that being said, thank you guys so much. It was amazing. I'm going to try and put some assets up for this so that it's not just like the random Sea of Thieves stuff every time we do this. So I don't know, maybe I'll have that put together by next week. Maybe I won't. In the meantime, if you have ideas, if you have other things, please by all means post in the Discord. We've got the page that says "See ya, Head of Steel." Thanks so much. But we've got the development channel, we got the streamers forum channel. Anything you've got, insights, ideas, throw it in general. Doesn't matter. Whatever you've got. You guys have a great day. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me. It's very special to me. I love you guys, and I will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.